Hello? Hello?
Hello, sir.
Good morning.
Morning, sir.
So I think I'm on my duty last week. I don't know how my body is. So tell me which I don't know. But I'm not feeling well. Oh my God.
Hello? Hello?
Hello, good morning, sir.
All right, go. So good morning. So what do we have? Have you had time to look at the handouts that I sent on international environmental framework? And do you have any question arising from the handout, so that we can make the clarification? Because if we don't have that, maybe I would say that I'm done with that section of the topic. Without topic, and then we can move to the next thing. Do we have any question on that?
From my end, sir, I don't have any question for now, sir.
Any other question? Any other member of the class? Any question on international legal framework or even national legal framework in terms of the first topic we did before now? Any question arising from there? I'm available to take your questions. Now, so one thing you would implore you to look at is, I mean, for purpose of the future. Now, if an examiner looking at those topics, an examiner looking at those two topics and trying to see the nature of question that might come out from the two topics. Now, for the first topic that we looked at, you want to focus on the different framework. Remember, if you read what I sent to you, you want to see what's the crux of that first handout in terms of the different legal frameworks. This time you can look at how rights are affected, the various rights that are affected, and how or whether there is anything called environmental rights within the Nigerian legal framework. So an examiner, from what we have discussed, might be tempted to focus on the extent of the legal framework for environment, especially at the national level. And so here, based on what we discussed, we talked about rights, we talked about the provision of Section 20, we talked about Article African Charter, we talked about What else we talked about? The various provisions of the of chapter 4 and the implication of chapter 2 on environmental rights, and how you might either say that there is something called environmental rights in Nigeria, or there is no environmental rights in Nigeria. And so, and I remember we mentioned cases like AG Ogun and AG Federation, AG Lagos, we mentioned Aberagba and all that. And there is this case that you should also look at. And I'm sure you will have looked at them in your constitutional law. I think it's AG Ogun and AG Lagos, yes. So on the provision of ICPC, and whether what the court established in that case, that if there is a provision from the fundamental objectives and directive principles of state policy, that then subsequently, and the National Assembly subsequent to that fundamental objectives enacts an act, a specific act relating to that subject, that action by the National Assembly enacting an act towards a provision of fundamental objectives would then make the fundamental objectives provision justiciable. So, which means that if, by virtue of what we have talked about, the fact that the National Assembly, even though the right to environment is a fundamental objectives, the fact that the National Assembly eventually made a legislation, enacted the NESRIA and several other acts on the environment, that in itself can make the right to environment justiciable under the Nigerian Constitution. So, which means that within the Nigerian legal framework, the right to environment exists. So, look at some of those the argument. So, it can simply come as, is there a right to the environment? Does Nigeria have any copious provision for the right to environment within the international legal framework? So those are the ways in which an examiner might want to tweak or twist the provisions on domestic national legal framework. And as regards the fundamental, the international principles on environment, of course, those ones are pretty straightforward. An examiner might be interested in you explaining 1, 2, or 3, or even 4 of some of those principles and giving examples of how some of those international treaties or even Nigerian provisions or statutes reflect some of those principles of environmental law. So you want to see that you have an understanding of those principles, core principles of international environmental protection. We talked about the PSONR. We talked about several provisions that reflect of those principles. And then we also talked about sustainable development. We talked about precautionary principle, polluters pay, and all that. So you must be able to appreciate what those principles are, and then how those principles are reflected in the Nigerian legal framework, including treaties, including the international treaties. Whether Nigeria is part of that treaty or not, your ability to be able to reflect, to state that those are examples of treaties that reflect those principles, including some of those cases that we cited in those cases, would do justice to the fact that you have a clear understanding of those principles for environmental protection purposes. So, any other question? Any question, rather? So, if you don't have any question, I think my job is done here. I might come in for substantive environmental issues within the Nigerian legal framework. But for now, I think those are the 2 topics I'll take as the preliminary stage. So maybe subsequently in the semester, I'll also step in. So any question? Any question? Hello?
We can hear you, sir.
Yes? No question? All right. So if you don't have any question, enjoy your...
Please, can you come again with the questions that you said?
I did not give you any question. No. I did not give you any question. No. If that's not the kind of thing you asked me to come again. Huh? Ask your colleagues if you are not listening properly. I can't come again. All right.
Sir, I want to make clarification on a particular case you mentioned. You mentioned, I think, AG Ogun about the ICPC Act. So the case I can remember that goes with that is AG
Ondo.
Ondo, and if I want to
Yes,
know
I
if
think
it's
it's
the
Ondo.
same case.
I think it's Ondo. I
Okay,
was
sir.
confused. It's AG Ondo and AG Federation. Yes. All right. So if you don't have any question, that means I'm of no use to you at this moment. Enjoy your Friday and enjoy your weekend. Enjoy your weekend. Bye.
Thank you, sir. Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you, sir.